Right, let's have a little chat about money. Some challenges, some blessings, and other things. Everybody goes quiet when you start to talk about money, don't they? First of all, let's read some scriptures. It's the story of the Israelites and how they got their resources to build the tabernacle in the desert. So Exodus 11, 1-3 says, "And the Lord said to Moses, I will bring one more plague on Pharaoh and on Egypt. Afterward he will let you go from here. When he lets you go, he will surely drive you out of here altogether. Speak now and in the hearing of the people, and let every man ask from his neighbour and every woman from her neighbour articles of silver and articles of gold. And the Lord gave the people favour in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people." It's an interesting statement, isn't it? After all, he just deposited 10 plagues on them. And it says there that Moses was great in the sight of Pharaoh and the servants and everybody in the land. Sometimes there are things in the scriptures that we gloss over and think, hang on, did I really read that? But that's what it says. So Exodus 12, 29-36, "And it came to pass at midnight that the Lord struck all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, all the firstborn of livestock. So Pharaoh rose in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. Then he called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, Rise up, go out from among my people, both of you and the children of Israel. Go, serve the Lord as you have said. Also take your flocks and your herds as you have said, and be gone, and bless me also. And the Egyptians urged the people that they might send them out of the land in haste, for they said, We shall all be dead. So the people took their dough before it was leavened, having their kneading troughs bound up in their clothes on their shoulders. Now the children of Israel had done according to the word of Moses, and they had asked from the Egyptians articles of silver, articles of gold and clothing, and the Lord had given the people favour in the sight of the Egyptians, so they granted them what they requested. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. Exodus 25 verses 1-9. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel that they bring me an offering. From everyone who gives it willingly with his heart you shall take my offering. And this is the offering which you shall take from them: gold, silver and bronze, blue, purple and scarlet thread, fine linen and goat's hair, ram skins dyed red, badger skins and acacia wood, oil for the light and spices for the anointing oil and for the sweet incense, onyx stones and stones to be set in the ephod and in the breastplate. And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I show you. That is the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings, just so you shall make it." And finally, Exodus 36, 1-7. "And Bezalel and Aholiab, and every gifted artisan in whom the Lord had put wisdom and understanding to know how to do all manner of work for the service of the sanctuary, shall do according to all that the Lord has commanded. Then Moses called Bezalel and Aholiab, and every gifted artisan in whose heart the Lord had put wisdom, every one whose heart was stirred, to come and do the work and serve it of the service of making the sanctuary. So they continued bringing to him freewill offerings every morning. Then all the craftsmen who were doing all the work of the sanctuary came, each from the work he was doing. And they spoke to Moses, saying, "The people bring much more than enough for the service and the work which the Lord has commanded us to do." So Moses gave a commandment, and they caused it to be proclaimed throughout the camp, saying, "Let neither man nor woman do any more work for the offering of the sanctuary." And the people were restrained from bringing, for the material they had was sufficient for all the work which was to be done. Indeed, too much. Have you ever been to a church where the treasurer's got up and said, "Next week there's going to be a refund of 50 quid each because you've been giving too much"? No, I don't think I've ever come across that. But it happened here. They said, "You're just giving too much." So let's have a look at a few thoughts about giving. First of all, preparation. God knew that they would need resources in a place where there were no resources when they got to the desert. So he prepared them by giving them resources. I wonder if they knew what it was all for. I doubt it. They didn't know about the Ten Commandments and the sanctuary and everything else till they got into the desert. So when they plundered the Egyptians, and when they got all that money, I wonder what they were thinking. I wonder if they thought, "Wow, this is great, this is all for me." Because there was all this stuff, incredible riches. And they were drowned in it as they left Egypt. And they were going to a desert where there was no shopping mall, no furniture stores, nothing that you could ever spend it on. And I wonder if they thought, I wonder what this is all for. Well, we'll keep it and see what happens. I found it interesting watching quiz programs. I don't watch too many. But when you watch a quiz program, as you get towards the end of the program and the prize money goes up, usually at some point the host says to the people, "Now if you win this £20,000 or £5,000 or whatever it is, what will you do with it?" And they say, "Spend it." They'll give the host something that they're going to buy, something they're going to do. But usually they spend it. I've never heard anybody say, "I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it just in case I need it in the future." No, we live in a spend, spend, spend world. And as we've known, and books that have been written about lottery winners, I mean, most of us would think, how could you possibly get through £6 million in 2 or 3 years? The tragedy is, they do. They actually do spend 6 million quid in 2 or 3 years, and they're back where they started from with no money. It's amazing in our natural thinking and our natural way how we view money as spending, getting something with. And it rarely crosses our head that the provisions that God gives us is because He's got something for us to use it for. You know, in the world we have these silly spend and save campaigns, don't we? I mean, how ridiculous. You can't spend and save. You either spend or you save. You can't do both. But we get conned by it. We see it and we think, yes, if I buy this, I'm going to save this. No, you're not. You're going to spend that. If you see a 2-for-1 offer that's £1 and buy one get one free and it's £1, what you're actually doing is spending 50p on each thing you buy. You save nothing. I mean, after all, on the way to church this morning, I saved £30,000. Yeah, I walked past the car showroom and saw a car worth £30,000 and I never bought it. So I saved £30,000 this morning. Now when you put it in that context, it sounds completely stupid. But if it's just £1 in a supermarket, we fall for it. No, you can't spend and save. The only way you can save is not spend. Who has ever saved up for someone else? I don't mean your mate. I don't mean birthday presents and Christmas presents. I mean, who has ever overheard a conversation, say in the church, where two people have been speaking together, and one has been saying to the other, I'd really like that, but at the moment I don't have the money for it. In fact, they might say, I don't think I'll ever have the money for it. Who has ever, on overhearing a conversation like that, said, I know what I do. I'll save up for it. I'll put £5 a week by, and when I've got enough money, I'll give it to them, and they can buy it. No, we'll save up for something for ourselves, won't we? I've saved up for lots of things for myself. Actually, I can't think that I've ever done what I've just said, so I better start trying. But it's true, isn't it? This thinking in our minds that is just part of our life without us realising it. The Joseph principle is sadly lacking in our concepts of finances and our possessions. Joseph stored up what he had in a time of excess so that it could be used in a time of leanness. That's really good wisdom, that is. We wouldn't be in our economic situation if countries ran their finances that way. But as soon as countries get rich, what do? They spend it all. Then when lean times come, as they do, they look around, we got no money. No, of course you haven't got any money, you idiot, you spent it. God poured his resources into these people so they'd be equipped for an unknown future event. And that's worth thinking about our possessions and things we come across and things we get and things we buy. They're not just for us. We can use them to bless others. When you want to buy a new sofa, you can look around for somebody who might need yours. Or you can go and buy them a new sofa and carry on using yours. We just don't think that way. You probably think I'm crazy. Well, I am. This principle of storing and preparation for some future event goes beyond money. We're always living in the here and now. And I suppose there's a definite part of our Christian life where that's the way we live it and we don't worry about the future. But there is a sense, and you might come into the church and you might sit down and you might hear the word and you might be thinking, well, I don't need this word today. I'm not where this preacher's preaching, I'm not there. I'm not in that scenario, so I can sit and have a snooze, or I can look on my phone, or I can do my emails or something. God might be giving you a word that although you don't need it now, you might need it tomorrow, you might need it in 3 weeks' time. God often brings to us preparation for some future event. Something that he knows is going to happen that we don't know is going to happen. But he brings us resources before the event because he loves us so much. And part of our Christian life is walking with him in such a way that we understand this preparation goes on. While we're living our relationship with God today, part of that living with him today is preparation for something in the future. Something he may call us to, something he may want us to do, something he may want us to finance, whatever it is. And we need to be aware of that, because out of this story, this is exactly what God did. He poured a massive amount of funding into the Israelites, and they didn't have anything to do it with. And he didn't tell them what was going to happen. They didn't know they were going to build a tabernacle in the desert. They didn't know there was going to be 10 commandments. They didn't know there was going to be all that ritual, all that clothing, all that furniture in the tabernacle. But they got the resources for something they didn't know what was going to happen. So they had to wait patiently till it was needed. And then, when it was time, they gave willingly. It says there, the Lord spoke to Moses, "From everyone who gives it willingly with his heart, you shall take my offering." I doubt whether amongst that massive crowd of Israelites, everybody was willing to part with what they had. I very much doubt it. But there were a lot who were. And God made it quite clear to Moses here. He says, "Take the offering from those who give it willingly, and leave the rest to go on their way." Don't try and force people to give it, even though they should. Just go to the ones who are willing to give and receive it from them. In the story, there was enough of them to give too much. There's an interesting theory going around these days, well, it's been around for a while, about focus on your strengths instead of your weaknesses. For so long we've been told, if you've got a weakness and you think this weakness will let you down or let your strengths down, people will come and say, right, what we need to do is strengthen your weaknesses. So they get people to focus on what they're weak at and to do something about it to try and make their weaknesses as strong as their strengths. There's a new concept around which says don't do that. Focus on what you're strong at. Put most of your time, most of your effort into what you're good at, what you're capable of. And then make your weaknesses strong enough so that they won't let you down, let your strengths down. Instead of wasting all your effort into trying to do something you're not so good at. Tiger Woods, the golfer, is a classic example of this. Tiger Woods had his weaknesses. He was very strong in driving and putting, but he was not so strong in the mid shots, the short shots when you were not on the green, where you weren't putting, but where you were close enough to the green not to whack the ball. Those middle shots. Don't know much about golf, so I don't know what they call them. So his coach put all Tiger Woods' effort into his strengths. He said, we're going to improve your strengths. We're going to make your first shots the best ever. We're going to make you the best putter in golfing. And then we're going to make these other shots that you're not good enough, just good enough. That's what we're going to do. We're just going to make them good enough. And he became a world champion. Focus on what you've got. Focus on your resources. Focus. Because you see, when you do what you're good at, you put your heart and soul in it. You know, it's soul destroying, isn't it? Trying to do something you don't really like or you're not really good at. It's really hard. Children have that problem at school, don't they? They hate certain lessons because they're not good at it, and they just don't like it, and it just doesn't click with them, and they really struggle. But our enthusiasm comes from what we're good at, for what we've got resources for what we've got gifts for. And the reason why I say this is because it makes us willing. We are all willing to do what we're good at. If somebody comes along to you and asks your help in something that you're good at, you'll usually get a positive response from them. Yes, I like to be able to do what I'm good at for you. So be willing. Focus on what you're good at. I once heard a preacher, and this was his own testimony, and he said one day he was sitting in church, and the previous several months there'd been a tremendous amount of pressure on his finances. So he was sitting there thinking, I think I'll give it a rest today. He said, it's been really hectic. I'll give it a rest. I'll not put my offering in today because I've had to spend out so much doing the work of the Lord. So as he's sitting there and the bucket's coming round, God says to him, that's absolutely fine, that is. That's okay with me. As long as you don't mind me giving your reward to someone else. And so he gave. We rob ourselves when we're not willing to give of what we've got into the kingdom. We're not actually robbing God. God will just find it from somewhere else. The people that get robbed is us. When I don't willingly give of my time and my money and my efforts and my talents and my gifts, all I'm doing is I'm not robbing you. I'm robbing myself. Because God will find someone else to do it. But many is the sermon that is preached to try and prize the money out of our tight-fisted little hands, isn't it? Oh dear. How many sermons have we had? How many sermons do we get? 2 Corinthians 9 verse 7 says, let each one of us give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. You know, sometimes it's really tragic, the pantomime people go through to get people to put money in the offering. We've all been to conferences, and there are all sorts of tricks of the trade that preachers use to get the offering from the congregation so it meets the budget. I remember, somebody standing up and saying, right, the Lord has told me there's 10 people in this congregation that can give £1,000. 10 people. Now, who are those 10 people? I've been there and seen this done. And then there's 20 people who can give £500, and they go down the system till they get to the fivers. And the interesting thing is that in the main, they get them. They actually find the 10 people, the 20 people, the 50 people, they find them. And the money's given. And I'm thinking, why do we have to do that? Why don't they just give? Why don't we just willingly give Why do we have to be persuaded? Why do we have to be cajoled? Why do we have to be pressurized into giving for the Lord? Because we don't love. We don't love. If I need to be pressurized into giving of anything that I have, it's a sure sign I don't love. Because the Bible says, "For God so loved the world that he gave." Love is stupidly generous. It's stupidly generous. Love, real love, doesn't count the cost. Love just sees an opportunity and rushes in to give, often more than is necessary to give. Love is so generous, and divine love is generous gone to seed. I mean, when you think of the blessings that God gives us in our lives, not just the ones we pray for, not the special ones, not the getting us out of a hole blessings, answering our prayers blessings. I mean, just think of the abundance of blessing that comes into our lives for no other reason that he's our Father and we're his child. It just pours onto us on a daily basis. But we so often fail to enjoy it because we're always looking at what we haven't got. That's because that's what the world does. The world focuses constantly on what we haven't got. God says, focus on what you've got, and you will discover that what you've got will go a lot further than trying to get hold of what you think you haven't got. And then the pressure goes, and life becomes enjoyable and peaceable. And what is the real blessing is faith rises. There's nothing like stress and anxiety and worry about something you haven't got to keep your faith in a box. The Apostle Paul said, "I have learned that in whatsoever state I find myself, to be content. Whether I have learned how to abound. I've learned how to have much. I've learned how to have little or almost nothing." And in both of these conditions and all stations between the two, I have learned to be content. And that brings peace. And that brings the enjoyment of life. And then we appreciate the blessings, and we suddenly discover that the things we're worrying about, we needn't have worried about at all. But we need to be willing. I remember going into a shop, it's a long time ago now, and I just happened, as I went into, it was Smith's in town, as I went into Smith's in town, there were two girls whom I knew by sight who worked in the same block that I worked in. The sort of people you just say, "Oh, hello," as you go into the office in the morning. And because I happened to be looking at the books that was really next to them, she was saying to her friend, "Oh man," he says, "my boyfriend's birthday," he says, "I'm looking for a book for him." So she's looking around the shelves for her books, and then suddenly she spots a book, and she says, "Ah, that one, he's been looking for that book for ages." She takes it off the shelf, she opens it up, she looks at the price, and she says, "I know I love him, but not that much," and puts it back on the shelf again. But so often we're like that. "I know I love you, Lord, but not that much." A caution. We have made the work of God so dependent on money. Wherever you look, whatever we do, whatever we're involved in, the problem of money always seems to rise up. We need money to do the work of God. Well, yes and no. It's not the work of God that needs the money, it's the tools we choose to use to do the work of God that costs the money. I've just been to Hungary to share fellowship and do a bit of teaching in a meeting. It cost me nothing. Actually nothing at all. I didn't spend a single bean from the moment I left this country to the moment I came back in. People gave me food and a place to stay, and I had some air miles so I could get a free flight. But the things that would have cost me money would have been the flight. It wasn't the teaching that cost me money, it was the flight that would have cost me money. But we've become so focused on the work of God must have money. I'd like to give you a bit of a different way of looking at it. The real work of God doesn't cost any money. Fellowship doesn't cost money. We had a great time last night. We did the sandwiches with the group that were here. There we were, buttering, filling and bagging. We decided to have a go and do the whole thing last night instead of like we'd been doing it split. And it succeeded. But it wasn't just that it succeeded. As those of us who were there, we had a great time of fellowship together. Good. No, we didn't sit down and discuss the Bible. No, we didn't sort one another's problems out. No, we just worked together. We just shared together. We just buttered bread together. And it was great. We just associated with each other. Now what that does is it builds a positive relationship. And out of that free fellowship, if somebody had expressed a need, it would have been ever so easy to say, oh, yeah, I can do that. At the end of the time we were doing, it wasn't difficult for me to say to Dawn, I'll take you home. And to Angela, who was here, I'll take you home. She lives in Nuneaton. She'd specially come over. But it wasn't difficult. It wasn't oh dear, I've got to take you to Nuneaton. No, we had fellowship together. So, yeah, I'll do it. I'll go. We've got it upside down. The more fellowship we have, which is free, the more we associate with each other, the easier it becomes to give of ourselves and our money into what needs to be done. Ministering to the word, this hasn't cost anything. Ministering the word to somebody doesn't cost you money. Laying hands on the sick and healing the sick, that don't cost you money. It's worth thinking about. But we rob ourselves. Because we make such a big deal about money, then we disfellowship with each other because of trying to get the money. And the tragedy is that as Christians, we use money as a weapon. All right, if they're going to do that, I'm not tithing anymore. It's using money as a weapon. I don't find that in the scriptures. You see, these people, although they were going to give for the purpose of building the tabernacle, it says quite clearly that they were to give to the Lord. Their gift was to the Lord, and that would be used for building the tabernacle. But the essence of the giving, the interaction of the giving was, my gift, as the Israelite came with his armful of jewellery or whatever it was he had and gave it to Moses and gave it to these people, he wasn't just giving it to the people who were building the temple, the tabernacle, he was giving it to the Lord. And that's an important point, because it's up to God what he allows to be done with his money, not me. And when we give our giving to the Lord, even though we've got our thinking on something special, it prevents us from being critical or moaning or using money as a weapon, or allowing money and gifts to come between us instead of binding us together. So if I give Steve a gift because he wants to do his shortfall and he's got to do something, and I've got some excess, and the Lord prompts me to give it to him because he wants a shiny new whatever.
Yeah, please.
But if I give it to the Lord, it doesn't matter to me whether he uses it for the shiny new whatever or not. If he takes the money, and if he decides to do something else with it, I don't mind. If he decides to give Marie a nice new shiny what's it instead, or if he wants to go on holiday,
Oh, yeah.
I've given it to the Lord. It now becomes his responsibility what he does with it, not mine. When I give to the Lord, I pass the responsibility over to God as to how he does it. I remember Selwyn Hughes telling the story. He'd just got a brand new car, and he was out with a friend who wasn't a Christian, and they were, I don't know, in a high street somewhere, and they would just they'd parked the car, and they'd gone into a shop, I don't know, it was a cafe or whatever it was, but they'd gone into the shop together because the friend wanted to get something. When he came out, he found there'd been an accident, and his brand new car was smashed up. So his friend was staggered that Selwyn took it so calmly. He said, if it had been me, I'd have been livid. And Selwyn turned round and said to him, well, if the Lord wants his car smashed up, that's up to him, not me. So there's some thoughts about money. Willingness. Willingness is the key to it all, or rather, love is the key to it all. If we would develop the free things, if we would develop the fellowship, if we would develop the spiritual ministry, if we would develop ministering the word by living to each other, if we would develop association with each other, fellowship with each other, if we would develop spiritual gifts and praying for each other and healing the sick, if we would develop the free things, we would become so bound together that when the financial things were needed, they just happen. We just flow. You see, how would you like, and I'll close with this, how would you like your boss to pay you the way you give to God? How would you like your boss to do that? How would you like your boss to say to you, well, this year it's my 50th birthday. It's a very special birthday. So from now, for the next 6 months, I'm not going to pay you any wages because I need that money for my birthday celebrations. I don't think we'd like that too much. We'd soon be down the tribunal. How would you like your boss to pay you fluctuatingly the way we give to God? That's worth thinking about, isn't it? We certainly wouldn't like it, but we'd see nothing wrong in giving to the Lord on a completely ad hoc way of doing it. God's system of giving could not be any simpler. Hands up all those who've got money. Any money. Doesn't matter what it is, any money. Hands up all those who can divide by 10. Right, you can tithe. But you see, it's such a great system because it doesn't depend on how much you've got. If all you've got is 10 pence, all you've got to put in the collection is 1p. I once had to do an offering talk, and I thought, oh no, not a blooming offering talk. What on earth am I going to say? How can I prize money out of this congregation? And the Lord said to me, it's simple. All you have to do is learn to live on 90% of your income. That's all. Easy, isn't it? You see, we use the word afford in the wrong direction. We spend the money on ourselves and then we use the simple phrase, now what can I afford to give to God? Whereas what we should do is the other way round. We tithe and then we say to ourselves, what sort of standard of living can I afford to live on with 90% of my income? Job done. But I know this from having tithed all my life, you will do more on your 90% than those who try to do on the 150% because they get loans from the bank to do it. And the marvellous thing about it is, it expands. When we are faithful regularly to give unto the Lord as He instructs us, our 90% gets bigger because He gives us more. So we get more. But the 90% just increases. And all sorts of ways God has of getting resources to us so that we can live like we've got 150% when we've only actually got 90%. Every time we find ourselves in a situation where we feel we should give something, we look at Jen and I look at each other and we say, can we afford to do this? We look at each other and we say, no. So we just do it. And it's there. It just, I don't know where it comes from sometimes, but it just comes. So, let's learn a lesson from the children of Israel. As God poured that provision into their life, He poured it into their lives so that they might have the resources for some future event. When they got to that future event, God did not come to them and say, right, now listen you lot, when you were in Egypt, you plundered Egypt. You thought that money was for yourself. Well, I've got news for you. It wasn't. Guess it. It's for me and my tabernacle. He didn't say that. He gave them that money freely, and then He said to Moses, go to the people and take the Lord's offering from everyone who is willing to give it. And there was more than enough for what needed to be done. And that will work. That will work. Amen.